964.
Navigation 768.
328.
184.
638.
Hello, everybody.
686.
Geolocation.
All right.
503.
Welcome to Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis. This is the weekly, sometimes live news and media roundup show for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute. Thank you for joining us. That is a synthetic, a recreation of the weird number stations phenomena. And if you're not familiar with that, you should definitely check out this article over at boingboing.net. Developer recreates creepy Cold War numbers stations using just 1 kilobyte of code. Yeah, so developer Terrence Eden created an eerie digital version of Cold War era number stations using nothing but built-in browser features and 1 kilobyte of JavaScript code. His creation speaks random numbers and words in various languages with unsettling pitch and speed variations. The project, built for the JS1024 Creepy competition, uses the browser's native text-to-speech API instead of pre-recorded audio files. Quote, most modern browsers have a built-in text-to-speech TTS API, Eden explains in his blog. By manipulating the speech rate and pitch with random values, Eden achieves disturbing vocal effects ranging from high-pitched drawls to rumbling gabbling. So, yeah, that's what you were hearing there. And yes, over at his shkspr.mobi, blog, is this post from Terrence Eden about this. And yes, you can click on through and there's a play with the demo where you get to see and hear all this, and you just click this little thing and it starts using your browser to perform a weird recreation of the number station.
61. 868.
Navigation.
619.
Now, I mean, it's not an exact recreation of the number stations, because I don't think most of those originally were using text-to-speech. But I don't know. Maybe that was where some of the first text-to-speech technology came from. I'm not really sure. Anyway, okay, thank you. This is the Wednesday, August 6, 2025 edition of Anomaly Now. Thank you for joining us. You can go to our website, anomalyarchives.org, and find links to all of the news articles that we'll be covering either in the show notes for today's episode, this, as I say, August 6, 2025 episode, or you can go to our Flipboard. All of the links at anomalyarchives.org will get you to the Flipboard links, the Patreon page, all that stuff. But yeah, let's get started with the news roundup. My goodness, there is quite a bit to discuss. Oh, so yes, that mention. So thanks to Anomalous.com for bringing that that Boing Boing article and its number station link to our attention. You can go to Anomalous.com. They have a great daily roundup of anomalous news, and they are definitely a resource that I lean on heavily for great new information and content. And when they posted about that number station recreation, they reminded their readers of the very first issue of The Anomalous, a fantastic publication that I wish was still happening. It is a old print publication where they would do an anthology of anomalous Fortean esoteric subject matters, and you could subscribe and purchase copies. But hey, the very first issue is available, I think, in its entirety over at this Scribd.com website. And yeah, there you can see it there if you're watching the video version of this show. And yeah, the first issue had some great articles. Mario Pazzaglini on alien writing, Greg Bishop's friend and inspiration. Mario Pazziglini, and Martin Cannon. Yes, the legendary Martin Cannon of controllers hypothesis infamy did a really good article on this very subject, the numbers game, all about number stations, and great other articles by Patrick Quige, Martin Kottmeyer, Lauren Coleman, Paul Rydeen, and others. Oh, and Ingo Swann and William Corliss, who was our era's Charles Fort. We're proud to have several of William Corliss's volumes in our Anomaly Archives collection. So yeah, you can download and read the entirety. I think it's the entirety of the first issue of Anomalous, and maybe he's uploaded some of the others. Hard to come by, but yeah, great resource. So there's your free publication for this episode. Well, like I say, you can check us out over at our website, anomalyarchives.org. And so if you want to reach out, you can contact us. Besides going to the website, you can email us at contact@anomalyarchives.org, the Flipboard address. But we also have a P.O. box. Since we are without a physical location, you can go to the website and get this P.O. box, and that is P.O. Box 152252, Austin, Texas, zip code 78715. That is Anomaly Archives at P.O. Box 152252, Austin, Texas 78715. Would love to get stuff from you via snail mail and our P.O. Box. And as an example of that, I want to give a shout out to somebody I'm not familiar with, but I just recently received materials from. That is the Jason Rogers, who puts together this zine that's been around, I think at least since 2019, maybe as far back as 2018, maybe further back, but it's called Asymmetrical Anti-Media, the review zine with lunatic fringed tendencies. So it's produced in the classic zine style of cut up and Xerox, and in this case, saddle stapled. And I'm pretty sure you can send off for copies of this. I don't know if he charges $1, $3, or $5 per issue, but we thank Jason for sending along copies of this. It was a pleasure to discover this in our P.O. box a couple of weeks back. Thank you, Jason. And besides this Asymmetrical Anti-Media zine, which is now in issue 18, spring of 2025, he also sent along this this tome, Manchurian Trickster, a collection of texts by Carrie Thornley. Yes. Edited and assembled by Jason Rogers. And woo, boy, that is some fun, crazy stuff. Because Carrie Thornley was a weird, crazy dude. If you're not familiar with him, you've got to check out our good friend Adam Gorightly's book, The Prankster and the Conspiracy. Yeah, I mean, Carrie Thornley was a very strange dude who was connected to Robert Anton Wilson, connected to Oswald and the JFK assassination. He succumbed to a wild array of conspiracy theories about his own history. He went off the deep end and accused Robert Anton Wilson of being all sorts of things, and Carrie Thornley believed himself to be possibly the result of some kind of Nazi eugenics or genetic engineering campaign, and like a Manchurian candidate assassin who, again, crossed paths with Oswald and was part of a novelization, fictionalized story of the assassination of a president before the Kennedy assassination. Very strange story. Anyway, thank you, Jason, and anybody who wants to send stuff to our P.O. Box, we'd encourage you. Again, that's Anomaly Archives, P.O. Box 152252 at Austin, Texas 78715. Well, let's jump right in. Of course, over at our Flipboard, there are a ton of news items that we're not going to get to everything, but oh man, I was so glad to see Rupert Sheldrake reflecting on his 1992 crop circle making competition. I often tell people about this. So many people say, oh, those things can't be created by humans. Well, I'm sorry. There's definitely tons of people who are really, really good at it and have been for a long time. That is not to say that every crop circle is made by a human. I don't know. That's certainly not exactly provable, but yeah, you can check out that article over at his Substack. There's just a ton of great stuff that we'll get to, but let's just go into some of the cryptozoology news. There's this one from over at thunderbirdphoto.com. We've been hitting up on them for great cryptozoology news. This one's from August 1st. The Susquehanna seal, that's Susquehanna, Susquehanna seal, reports of mammalian monsters in the eastern United States' longest river. And yes, clearly an AI generated image of a nice black and white image of a man in a rowboat in a swampy area with a giant manatee hurtling itself out of the water to obviously flop on top of him. You got to check out that image. I know AI images, they're just the bane of our existence, but sometimes they're good. Anyway, so just to read a little bit from this, the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania, the longest river in the eastern United States, has a long history of reports suggesting that a large mammalian monster inhabits its rocky depths. Columbia, Pennsylvania, about 15 miles downstream from Bainbridge in Lancaster County, was excited in April 1878 over the appearance of an animal variously described as a sea lion, an otter, or a seal. It was spotted standing on its rear legs in the river near the Wrightsville shore. The animal was at least 7 feet in length with a head like a dog. It had a thin neck about a foot long and a body with a 1 foot diameter around its thickest section. The creature possessed small eyes and had something like a fan with claws or fins on each side of its head, according to the Lancaster Intelligencer. On May 27, 1885, the Lancaster New Era newspaper published this story about a strange aquatic animal seen at Bainbridge. So it goes on to quote extensively from that. A monster of the waters, a curious fish or animal that is exciting the residents of Bainbridge. And yeah, after quoting that article, he goes on to say, Clinton County, Pennsylvania historian Lou Bernard has written about a Susquehanna River monster of this era that he has affectionately dubbed the Susquehanna seal. As related by a Lock Haven Daily Democrat in 1897, there were generations of stories dating back to indigenous inhabitants about a strange water beast contained to the west bank of the Susquehanna River, immediately above the mouth of Kettle Creek on the northern end of Clinton County. As the legend goes, this, quote, marine animal or sea monster, unquote, entered the Susquehanna River via its mouth in Chesapeake Bay at Havre de Grace, Maryland, during the early decades of the 18th century, before the construction of any dams along the river. The beast became trapped inland, but was so awash in delectable shad and other fish that it, quote, continued to wax in size until he equaled the bulk of an ox or hippopotamus. The animal grew so large as the seasons passed that no ordinary flood provided sufficient water to carry it over the shoals. So it continued to inhabit the river depths along the big black rocks at the bottom of the Susquehanna. There's a lot more to this article, including, I guess, this actual... Oh, yes, this is a classic reproduction of the Nautilus crew battles a giant dugong in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But yeah, great stuff. Lots of citations for further investigation and reading. So check out the great work going on over there at thunderbirdphoto.com. American Strangeness and the Missing Thunderbird Photo Mystery Blog. Yeah. Meanwhile, a trio of articles by our good friend Tim Banal over at where he blogs at for Coast to Coast AM. You know, that long-running paranormal radio show. Well, let's see. Over there at coasttocoastam.com, we've got this, like I say, these 3 different articles of a cryptozoological bent. Watch fishermen unsettled by eerie mystery creature spotted in South Korean river. Now, this is links to a YouTube video that looks to be just basically a big black shape moving in the water at night. Hard to tell what it is or could be. You know, my first mind goes to school of fish that's moving as if it's one large creature, or just some debris that's moving in a strange way, maybe being affected by a school of fish underneath. Who knows? But it also reminds me, there's a very famous quote-unquote cryptozoological photo of what looks like a giant black tadpole in a shallow beach environment, which turned out to just be an oil slick. But it just was so evocative. It's the kind of thing, upon immediate viewing, you think, oh my God, that's some big creature with a long tail, just from a still image. So things can so often be deceptive upon first viewing or with forced perspective. But yes, Tim writes over at Coast to Coast, A wild video from South Korea shows the moment when a fisherman spotted a mysterious creature that suddenly appeared in the water and swam toward him while he stood on the shore. The strange sighting reportedly occurred at the Han River in Seoul last month. Footage of the remarkable moment seen above was posted on YouTube by the channel Yongdam Story, that's J-U-N, Youngdam Story, which normally features fairly mundane videos wherein its host visits various fishing spots around the country. However, on this occasion, something seemingly extraordinary unfolded that left the man fleeing the scene. In the video, as the host sits at the shore of the river with his lines cast, he suddenly sees something unusual out of the water. I need a cough button, sorry. "What is that? I'm scared," he exclaims in astonishment before observing that it's moving towards me. The oddity's approach understandably unsettles the fisherman, who jumps out of his chair and shines a flashlight at the creature. However, the illumination failed to provide an answer as to the nature of the monster that he estimated was about 13 to 16 feet long and boasted a thick body. Amazingly, the fisherman indicated that the creature lingered in the water for about 20 minutes, and at various points there appeared to be two mysterious quote-unquote monsters out on the river. Looking back on the bewildering sighting, the man marveled that, "I've been fishing for decades, but I've never seen anything like this before." Since being posted online, Jungnam's story video has gone viral in South Korea and sparked considerable debate as to what appeared in the river that night. What do you make of it? Anyway, yeah, you can click through and watch the video. Not particularly exciting, but if you like cryptozoology stories, here's another one for you. All right, moving to another, the next two are Bigfoot Sasquatch oriented, again reported by Tim Banal over at Coast to Coast AM. Pair of campers with binoculars report seeing Bigfoot in Washington State. This is from July 25th. Now, did I report on this already? I'm not sure. He says a pair of campers in Washington State could not believe their eyes when they looked through their binoculars and spotted what appeared to be Sasquatch. The unique case was reported to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, that's BFRO, by witness Ryland Snyder, who explained that the sighting occurred on June 26 while he was camping with a buddy at the Wenatchee River. As the two men relaxed that evening, he recalled their conversation came to a sudden stop when his friend noticed something unusual across the river. Grabbing their binoculars, the pair was stunned by what they saw. Recollecting the observation, Snyder marveled that they caught sight of a bipedal creature standing around 8 to 10 feet tall and sporting, quote, very dark reddish brown hair that covered its whole body except its face and hands. The pair were understandably awestruck as they passed the binoculars back and forth, watching the mystifying figure as it moved branches and other brush around. Upon getting a second look at the suspected Sasquatch, Snyder said it turned its face toward him, revealing a, quote, very ape-like visage with a flat nose. Chillingly, it would appear that the possible Bigfoot also noticed the two campers as the creature scanned across the river with its eyes and seemingly saw the pair, which prompted it to quickly flee the scene, still on 2 feet. Expressing regret that he did not have his phone with him, Snyder indicated that he hopes to return to the location, having weirdly fallen ill the day after the sighting, to look for any possible evidence of the creature. And this other one over, again, at Coast to Coast. Watch. Bigfoot filmed dashing through woods on Sierra Nevada mountains. A remarkable video filmed in the Sierra Nevada mountains shows what appears to be a Bigfoot dashing through some woods before stopping to watch the unknowing witness who inadvertently filmed it. The intriguing footage was sent to the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization research group by a man named Bill, who explained that the strange scene was captured this past May in Coyote Ridge, California. While filming his dogs playing in the snow, one of the pooches seems to spot something unusual in the nearby woods that went unnoticed by him until he later looked at the video and was stunned by what he saw. Yeah, haven't looked at this very closely, but yep, you can click over there at Coast to Coast and check it out yourself. Let me know what you think. Meanwhile, over at Carl Schucker's blog, that's carlschuckerblogspot.com, that's KARLSHUKER.blogspot.com, is this article, Spotting a Spotted Bushbuck in Liberia. It's from mid-July. And there is a picture there of a typically patterned male northern bushbuck in Senegal. Bushbucks are the smallest member of the spiral-horned African antelope group, which also includes the kudus, nyalas, sitatunga, elands, and bongo. Traditionally, just a single bushbuck species has been recognized, Tragelaphus scriptus, albeit with numerous subspecies, some of which long ago were briefly deemed by certain splinter mammalogists to be species in their own right before being lumped into T. scriptus. These are distributed through much of sub-Saharan Africa. More recently, however, it has been split taxonomically into two: the northern bush book, native to Western and Northern Central Africa, which retains the binomial name T. scriptus, and the Cape bush book T. sylvaticus, native to Southern and Eastern Africa. With some nice pictures of these cute creatures, beautiful animals, including a adult female northern bush book with a calf in Ghana, and pictures of the front of the dust jacket for Paith's above-cited book, illustrated with one of his own paintings. Note the spotted bush book skin sticking partly out of one of his cases. This is much more for the non-anomalous cryptozoologists, so those folks looking really for those rare animals and so forth. Well, that's going to do it for our cryptozoology portion of the program. Let's move right along to our UFO portion. Hold tight, we'll be right back. All right, thanks for sticking with us, folks. So, yes, this is Anomaly Now. It is Wednesday, August 6, 2025, and we are moving into the UFO news portion of tonight's show. And boy, as usual, there is a ton of news over at our Flipboard, which will be recreated and is archived at anomalyarchives.org. Not going to get to all of this, but there's definitely some things I wanted to comment on. Not going to go into too deep on this. There's just so much happening. It's really crazy how much is happening publicly and also privately. There's always a ton of stuff going on privately behind the scenes, folks. But yeah, big news, such as it is the truth out there. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Yes, it is, quote unquote. This one over at Sentinel News, Baptiste Freescore, is quoting from a recent podcast where she was interviewed. I know. Tulsi is obviously extremely divisive, as every political figure is these days. But there you go. Meanwhile, so check right in the same string of articles on our Flipboard is a link to a YouTube interview from a few months back that I don't believe I've had the chance to listen to yet. And I think I came across it and just completely forgot about it, and failed to flip it into the Flipboard, but now it's there now. I forget the name of this podcast, but this title here is saying, it's the Techtopia with Chitra Raghavan. Probably mispronouncing that name. Episode 12, maybe. Grandson remembers a quote-unquote flying saucer pilgrimage. Brian Cunningham, UC Irvine. So, yeah, I haven't had the chance to listen to this, but I'm really interested because I think, so apparently he's the grandson of the couple who wrote the book Flying Saucer Pilgrimage. And for those of you who are members of our patron base membership, you might recall back in February, Aaron Gullius gave a wonderful presentation, a deep dive called Street Level Saucers, the Detroit Flying Saucer Club, the FBI, and the dawn of the UFO era. And yeah, if you're not familiar with Aaron Gullius, I highly recommend his Saucer Life podcast. Been enjoying that for years. Full disclosure, I carry it on my unaffiliated to the Anomaly Archives personal web radio station that I've been streaming since the year 2000. 25 years of streaming web radio online over at anomalyradio.com. Yeah, I've been streaming for the last couple of years or so his Saucer Life podcasts. But man, so Aaron Gullius spoke a lot about the couple, because I believe they were basically the main members of, I think, the Detroit Flying Saucer Club. If not, I may be misremembering, but he definitely mentioned them and this book that I was just referencing that we recently flipped. You can watch the video or listen to the podcast there on YouTube, or it's also available through your favorite podcatchers. Techtopia, good story podcast with Chitra Raghavan, grandson remembers Flying Saucer Pilgrimage, featuring guest Brian Cunningham. So that's pretty interesting. Right next to, on the same line in our Flipboard lineup, again, these are not even the things I really wanted to cite for today's show, but They're things that have all come across my feed in the last 24 hours. In fact, yeah, there's a YouTube of recent episode of Whitley Strieber's Dreamland podcast where he talks about something very strange that, I'm still inclined to lean towards a mundane explanation, but you'll bear out what I have to say on this. So yes, it's called "This is the Single Strangest Story in the History of Dreamland." Now, coming from Whitley Strieber, that's a bit extreme. Whitley can be a bit hyperbolic, I suppose. And as the blurb says, something happened at Contact in the Desert 2025 that is unforgettable and crucially important. A long dead individual is involved and there is a powerful message. So you can see from the still there, and there's two images like this shown in the episode. And basically it's a audience member just was randomly taking pictures of the stage, presumably like between lectures as the speakers were exiting and the new speakers coming onto the stage. And behind them is this massive wall that is an LED projection screen of some sort that was advertising the events, the upcoming lectures. And at the top it says Whitley Strieber. And underneath it, I think it says something like unraveling something planet from psychedelics to synchronicity or something like that. So presumably some other presenter. I don't think that was Strieber's talk, but superimposed over that, but clearly behind and the speakers on the stage. Let me see if I can get a bigger image of this for you. But basically, it's an image of what appears to be, so again, it says Whitley Strieber, and underneath it, unraveling reality panel. Oh, okay. From psychedelics to synchronicity. And there's this kind of red, green, blue RGB. It looks like a head in semi-profile from maybe two different angles. And there's a red color, a blue color, and a green color. And so clearly it seems the first guess would be some kind of technological effect being imposed on the screen. Nobody else. So this woman took the picture. She didn't see this when she took the picture. She only saw it in the photographs on her iPhone, I believe, after the fact. And she immediately showed it to a friend who is associated with Strieber. And he got copies of the images and showed him the Strieber and showed him around, and nobody else apparently noticed this. Nobody else seemed to notice this at the time, and it may not have even actually appeared physically, observably on the screen. Now, as the fellow that Strieber speaks to in this podcast at the beginning, I think his name's Wade Johnson, he's tried to figure out ways technologically that this could have happened, and of course he suggests what I immediately thought, which was perhaps there was some kind of flicker rate with this screen where something could have been thrown up either through a hack or deliberately that would be imperceptible to human eye flicker rate perception, but could have been captured, as in this case, by the much faster, I believe, flicker sensor rate. I don't know how the proper terminology for the camera, the iPhone camera. Whatever the case, he on the fly, I guess, fed these two different images. I'm not sure how he didn't go into great detail on Whitley's show, but he put the two images into ChatGPT and asked it to do something he'd done with other image enhancement tasks and had it try to merge the color layers and the two images. And what he came up with, what looks like a bald, and I should have said from the beginning, this, to me, the first person, I swear to God, when I first saw this, I thought, Peter Scotfish of the Soul Foundation. That's who I thought it looked like. But yeah, it looks like somebody with a shaved head, but in a slight profile, half profile. So apparently this Wade Johnson, if that's not the right name, showed it to Whitley, and Whitley's like, that face looks really familiar. That image looks very familiar. And apparently it got shown to our good friend Greg Bishop, who immediately says something like, that looks like Mac Tony's. Mac Tony's, of course, having passed, I believe in 2010 or thereabouts, and having his grand work thin as it is, finally published posthumously, called The Crypto-Terrestrials. And anyway, so all that said, this is an interview, and I haven't finished watching it, but Strieber is making a big deal about this and using it, I think, rightly, perhaps, as an opportunity to re-promote Mac Toney's long out-of-print book, The Crypto-Terrestrials. And basically, Strieber's interpreting it as he is wont, given his perception and belief that his wife, Anne, has been continuously communicating with him from the other side after she passed. He feels like this is Mac Toney's making his presence known and reasserting the importance of his book, The Crypto-Terrestrial Hypothesis. And I certainly have used every opportunity, because the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis has come up quite a bit in the last couple of years. And every time it does, I try to direct people to that book, not because it's some voluminous end all to the UFO phenomena, but because it's an amazingly thoughtful, speculative work, re-examining the UFO phenomena from outside the ETH extraterrestrial hypothesis perspective. All right, enough of that. All right, moving right along. Right, so other big news. I am not even trying to cover this, but yeah, what are you going to do? J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, is quote-unquote obsessed with UFOs, says he plans to get to the bottom of the mystery. You know, I can't. Who isn't interested, at the very least, in this subject, at least just a tad? But as has been discussed, it seems like the current administration is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks to get people to stop talking about the Epstein files. And several people have suggested that this is the latest effort. But it's also very true that the guy that financed J.D. Vance the most, Peter Thiel, billionaire Thiel, PayPal Mafia Thiel, is interested in UFOs, among other things, and seems to probably fund a lot of pro-paranormal UFO-related podcasts, we'll just say. Yeah. Again, moving right along, last week we talked about Dan Sherman and his famous work, Above Black, Project Preserve Destiny, and how it seems to be having a resurgence. You can go to our Anomaly Archives page with lots of links about that. And this all seems to be because of, as I mentioned last week, actually, there's the link here, I think. Where is it? No, yes. This Italian magazine, L'Espresso, that my attention was brought to, and that mentions this idea of, it mentions that the Donald Trump's White House is trying to redirect all these special access program data feeds, these intel feeds related to UFOs, through the White House directly to him, bypassing all the previously existing national security infrastructure. And this article, which you'll have to translate into English, implies that it's called Project Preserve Destiny, and that this is all coming from insiders at the Capitol, at the White House, who are trying to redirect this infrastructure. Now, I've seen people describe this magazine as reputable. I don't know what to make of that, but I at the time was unaware of this article by, I think his name's, Christopher Sharp, over at liberationtimes.com. I know some people love this guy's work, some people pan it, but I'm not sure on the dates here. Let's see. That Espresso article is, I guess, came out July 16th, and Christopher Sharp's article is dated, July 13th. So it seems pretty likely that the Italian magazine may just be quoting or interpreting Christopher Sharp's article from the 13th, 3 days earlier, titled UFO Whistleblowers Aim Spotlight at White House Secrecy Machine. Christopher Sharp writes, in a new interview with podcaster Stephen Diner. Oh, well, there's the thing. I should have listened to that podcast, right? On July 8th, Representative Burleson said that many special access programs relating to unidentified anomalous phenomena, quote, operate directly under the supervision of the White House. Sources tell Liberation Times that the drive for secrecy starts inside the White House itself, pushed by current officials who span administrations and work in two offices so sensitive their names cannot be disclosed publicly. So nothing's been disclosed publicly. This is all just insider information aside from this quote from this podcast with Burleson. According to those sources, UAP missions are acknowledged at the highest levels of the White House, but remain hidden from most cabinet agencies behind elaborate cover programs. If true, the claims suggest UAP missions are far more centralized and politically sensitive than previously reported. Now, here's where I think, again, that Italian paper was just ripping off Christopher Sharp, not necessarily doing their own research and verifying any of this. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Hopefully, if they have sources, but I mean, I hope they're wrong on a personal level. I hope that Christopher Sharp is wrong in what he's saying here. But he says, quote, one defense source pointed to Dan Sherman's book, Above Black, Project Preserve Destiny, as a useful primer on how such compartmentalization works. So, maybe the interpretation, maybe the translation of the Italian article is an imprecise translation, not saying that inside sources are saying that's the name of the program, but yeah. His description of layered secrecy mirrors today's system, according to the source. The 6 layers of secrecy are said to be as follows. And again, the 6 layers is referred to in that Italian paper. So, this is where the criticisms of Kirkpatrick and the Arrow report of UFO enthusiasts such as myself, ufologists, and the UFO community at large being a big echo chamber, just repeating the same rumors over and over and being a game of telephone, I think in some ways are really true. But yeah, so we'll see. I have no doubt that there are political machinations happening behind the scenes that are being, as I mentioned, that those billionaires who are funding the people who've gotten into power quite likely would love to get their hands on this technology. And now that all these agencies have been doged, they may be able to, and there's allegations that there's AI being applied to the funding streams to find these secret access programs and get some kind of insider tech and information to get that upper hand for their own businesses. Anyway, that was just follow up for that last bit of rumor mongering going on in the UFO sphere, the UFO community, UFO Twitter, as they say. Meanwhile, similar craziness happening with regard to Richard Bandurek, who gets mentioned several times in that Whitley Strieber, the Cryptoterrestrials, Mac Tony's memorial video I was alluding to, talking about. Yeah, last week we were talking about all the scuttlebutt about Richard Bandurek, who back in late 2024 was on this ecosystemic, whatever the heck it's called, podcast, ecosystemic futures podcast, talking about the reverse engineering work that he did for the government through these NGOs that he was working for, his own, talking about his propellantless propulsion technology. So yes, over on UFO Twitter, Joe Murgia, the UFO Joe, tweeted, "Can I break 1,000 likes by sharing bad news? ? I was skeptical of Ben Derek's claims, so last night I asked Dr. Eric Davis what he thought. Now, of course, this is unsubstantiated. I don't know that I've seen any verification from Austin's own Eric Davis, who works with Hal Puthoff at his Earth Tech or various endeavors, and who, of course, was part of the various Bigelow projects. But this quote is attributed to Dr. Eric Davis. Quote, Bandurek is a liar on par with Burlish, Lazar, Fausch, and Michael Moran. I've already told his story in other chat groups because I met him at the 2021 JANAF, JANNAF virtual meeting. No real UAP WUSAP personnel would ever come out and say one single word about their work because of the counterintelligence investigation, polygraph, prosecution, and conviction for violating the relevant national security laws and regulations. Those people are held up to much higher security scrutiny than guys with top secret SCI clearance. Well, make of that what you will, but yeah, we updated our Richard Bandurek page over at anomalyarchives.org with that information. As Pavel said on Psychoactivo, shots fired. All right, moving right along. Oh yes, over at Sentinel News, that's more Baptiste Precor. 2026 NDAA, quote, directs the Deputy Secretary of Defense to brief the Congressional Defense Committees. A preliminary version of the U.S. military spending bill suggests that Congress is attempting to enhance its oversight of unidentified aerial phenomena. He's mainly quoting posts by D.D. Johnson, and it seems like they're still hammered away trying to get this UDAP. Is that what it's called? I forget. Yes, the UAPDA, UAPDA, into the NDAA. You can check that out. It's a detailed article there quoting much of Dean Johnson's work. Over at Life in Jonestown by good old blogger, journalist Billy Cox. Blue Book redo. The Federal Secrets Task Force is about to hit the wall. Now, again, I'm not going to read all of this, but it's a good article. I love his attitude. He's such a curmudgeon, but he's been at this a long time, so I know how he feels when all this stuff is happening, and you're just like, what? Really? Come on, y'all. But he does start off with some other information that's not really UFO related, but it's certainly relevant to what's been going on with the Secrets Task Force, Rep Luna's group. He says, seriously, can't anybody get this UFO stuff right? In one of the least surprising headlines of the 21st century, we now know the CIA was lying about 11/22/63 when they assured the Warren Commission, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and the Assassinations Records Review Board, and several federal judges they knew nothing about Lee Harvey Oswald prior to the snuff job in Dallas. They likely perjured themselves. But this one came with a showstopper. Official confirmation that George Joanides, the secret agent who had been shadowing JFK's accused killer, was put in charge of obstructing Congress. Deputy Chief of the CIA Psychological Warfare Branch in Miami, known to a small band of agency-financed anti-Castro Cubans only by the alias Howard, Joanides was the dark world's hand-picked liaison to the HSCA. From 1976 to 78, as lawmakers revisited the killings of President Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., Joanides controlled what Congress was and wasn't allowed to know. On July 3rd, some 35 years after his death in 1990, the career spook was exposed as the guy who conducted a masterclass in information management against the legislative branch. The release of the incriminating documents marked a big win for former Washington Post investigative reporter Jefferson Morley and fellow sleuths at the nonprofit Farrell Foundation, who have chased this story for decades. But it was an even bigger feather for Rep. Anna Paulina Luna, chair of the House Oversight Committee's Declassification of Federal Secrets Task Force. Although Trump ordered the declassification of JFK, MLK, and RFK files in January, researchers are crediting Luna for moving the ball. Quote, the big difference between Luna and the White House is Luna has actually talked to people, says Larry Hancock, a member of the Farrell team. He's also part of SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Quote, she's the one that got the Joanides file, not the White House, because she literally called someone in the CIA with the information that Morley had given her. She said, I want this. I know you guys have it. And they responded. I would say if she gets the right information, she's effective and she will go after it. But Luna's truth train is about to hit the wall. Formed in February to unpack a slew of conspiracy tropes, from the origins of COVID-19 to the closets of Jeffrey Epstein, the task force waded through tens of thousands of JFK documents, many of them duplicates released years before, just to score that one golden nugget on Joanides. But the most consequential issue in the task force laundry basket, UFOs, UAP, is still ahead. By contrast, it'll make JFK transparency look like a game of marbles. Already citing the stonewalling and stovepiping of data coming from an agency charged by lawmakers in 2022 with facilitating accountability, Luna advocates pulling the plug on the all-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and recent twists have emboldened her case. Earlier this month, former acting and deputy Aero director Tim Phillips went on a podcast blitz to issue updates on and frustrations with the agency's progress. The news wasn't good. declaring that many UFO reports were actually mistaken for classified U.S. tech. Quote, "My God," he said in one interview, "they look like Klingon death ships. They're absolutely amazing." The senior National Intelligence Service officer parroted the exhausted maxim about UAP being a cover for real-world military hardware. Conscientious whistleblowers who approached AARO with claims to the contrary, he said, have been suckered by unofficial disinformation psyop fakery called Yankee Blue. Supposedly, the Pentagon ordered it to stop after AARO informed the brass in 2023. "Thanks for your service. Now get lost." But in a truly surprising revelation, Phillips appeared to have verified an aspect of what several sailors vouched for during the 2004 Tic Tac encounter off Southern California. Participants in that 21-year-old stretch of weirdness have claimed the fleet was visited by a helicopter ferrying unknown players to confiscate documentation of that event. Chief Petty Officer Gary Voorhees said he was ordered to turn over the USS Princeton's data recording tapes to visiting plainclothes agents. Over at the USS Nimitz, aviation technician Patrick Hughes says he was ordered to surrender bricks of sensor data gathered by an E-2 Hawkeye surveillance plane. Hughes says he never learned the identities of the naval officers who made off with the stash. In fact, Phillips says a helicopter did run a sortie to the Nimitz fleet in the Pacific during the exercises that provoked the Tic Tac, but the mission didn't necessarily involve UFOs. The passengers were scientists with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which had come to fetch a newfangled intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance device, ISR, they'd been testing with the Third Fleet. They wore black suits. Years later, when AARO tried to locate that ISR data, which Phillips said reportedly involved anomalies, the agency came up empty. The whole thing, he added, was like a, quote, comedy of errors, unquote. Now, that is still just rumor. I think I mentioned it in a previous show, and it seems to confirm what those people say. And I have no doubt that this happened. But this, whether or not it was DARPA, is still up in question, because that just seems like, again, it just doesn't seem like it's been authenticated. We've got some more information that could lead to a firm conclusion, but it's not a firm conclusion yet. Mainly because it all seems to center around testing of a type of drone that whose testing had already ceased by the time this event occurred. So the timeline doesn't fit for that being a DARPA drone test, which is part of what's been suggested by Tim Phillips in the McWest interview. Continuing the article just briefly, and it goes on for quite some time, but I'll just read a little bit more. Days later, on July 18th, Phillips was notified by the Office of National Intelligence that his severance from government service, scheduled for October, was effective immediately. The former Marine Corps lieutenant colonel received no explanation. Phillips said something else that should have gotten a little more attention. AARO welcomed input from the SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Quote, "They sent us a PhD dissertation that was superb," he told podcaster John Michael Gordier. "It's the type of analytical work and rigor we would have used as intelligence professionals," unquote. A pattern of neglect. Quote, "That came out of our intentions team," acknowledges Larry Hancock, who conveniently enough is also an SCU researcher. Quote, "We've been looking at UAP activity from 1945 to 75 in records almost exclusively curated out of Project Blue Book, and we apply rigorous pattern analysis to try to understand what their intentions may be. We just sent our fourth paper to AARO because that's the sort of thing they should be doing and aren't. Just like Blue Book did, they're tackling it case by case by case, one at a time, instead of trying to see the bigger picture," unquote. Now, that's about halfway through the article. I encourage you to check out the rest. And yes, that's over at lifeinjonestown.substack.com. That is Billy Cox's blog. He is a professional journalist who's left the mainstream field of journalism, and like so many, is just journaling on his own, blogging on his own. Okay, meanwhile, over at expandingfrontiersresearch.org, our good friends Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer and others are hard at work doing FOIA requests, and I will add that they are two of our upcoming presenters. Jack and Erica are going to be presenting to our monthly Patreon Anomaly Academy lecture series very soon. We'll have details posted at the website in the near future. but I'm really looking forward to their presentation. I think they're doing good work. It's very different than the kind of work I mostly am personally interested in terms of the nature of the phenomena, but there's so many ways one can approach these areas of research, and it takes a village, so to speak. So over at expandingfrontiersresearch.org, Leon Davidson to FBI, Nazi-like activity, quote, cloaking itself among UFOs and New Agers. Jack Brewer writes, Gray Barker was an entrepreneur, publisher of UFO zines, and an author with an unapologetic inclination for embellishment. Indeed. In 1960, he sent a letter to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. A copy of Barker's letter to Hoover was obtained from the National Archives while preparing for a recent discussion with Gabriel Mackey, author of The Saucerian, UFOs, Men in Black, and the Unbelievable Life of Gray Barker. Woohoo! Can't wait to hear that interview. Oh, wait a minute. Is it already available? Did I miss it? Oh, no. Has this already been posted? Yeah. Okay, it has, and I need to check it out. How did I miss that? All right. Well, yeah, it's over at their YouTube channel, UFOs, Men in Black, and Hoaxes. Gabriel McKee discusses Gray Barker. This was posted about a month ago. Gosh. See, there's just too much going on. I try to collect as much as this information as we can and archive it through the Anomaly archives. Right, moving right along. In the letter, pictured below, Barker references another letter, this one written from Dr. Leon Davidson to Hoover. Now, for those that don't know, Leon Davidson is a fascinating character who worked for the Manhattan Project and became obsessed with UFOs, but he became convinced that the CIA and other agencies were using it to manipulate the public and use it for covert operations, basically psychological warfare, psychological covert operations, and that it was in some ways, like we've been discussing, the idea of UFOs as cover for advanced aircraft and other technologies. Barker informs Hoover he was sent a copy of Davidson's letter and proceeds to address its content. EFR obtained the Davidson letter through the Freedom of Information Act. This blog post will explore the circumstances surrounding Barker and Davidson's January 1960 letters to the FBI. Anyway, I encourage you to go check this out, but basically, yeah, Barker explained to Hoover how his letter was prompted by correspondence received from Dr. Leon Davidson, who informed Barker he alerted Hoover to fascist activity within the, quote, crackpot fringe. According to Barker, the circumstances described by Davidson involve people known generally to be surrounding those trying to seriously research the subject of flying saucers. Barker goes on to tell Hoover he does know that some of the writings and literature connected with these strange fringe groups contain, quote, the hate line, unquote, identified with Nazis or fascists, but adds that he is unaware of any flying saucer groups, quote, tainted with anything which could be described as overtly following the communist line, unquote. He also assures the director, quote, his files would be open to Hoover if the need arises, but he doubts he could be of any real help. Very interesting work going on by EFR with Brewer and Lukes. And Davidson is, like I say, a fascinating character. Yeah, I got to read this thing. According to the CIA, in 1959, Davidson wrote about electronic countermeasures known as ECM in the context of how the technology was likely leading to reports of UFO sightings. In this classic work, ECM plus CIA equals UFO, or How to Cause a Radar Sighting, Davidson argued that what started out as dropping aluminum foil strips from planes in order to clutter enemy radar evolved into a CIA psychological manipulation tool. And yeah, this is something that's been written about, I believe, in Mark Pilkington's book, Mirage Men, and more recently in blog articles by Tanner Boyle at his Getting Spooked blog, all of which I highly recommend. Well, anyway, that's over at expandingfrontiersresearch.org. Check that out. And just moving right along here. Oh, is this going to work? Yes, over at John Greenwald Jr.'s theblackvault.com. DOD releases, quote, verbal legal advisement, unquote, given to UFO whistleblower David Grush. This is pretty interesting in that it helps us understand possibly why it appears that Grush had such a reticence to actually finally speak to Arrow, as he and others have been expressing frustration in getting their testimony into the public record, into the hands of those who could perhaps do something in the governmental arena. But yeah, you can check that out over at theblackvault.com. Oh, so much more to go on. But we'll just real quickly go through this over at liberationtimes.com. That's again Christopher Sharp's website. Files reveal mystery drones breach airspace around RAF Marham, Britain's frontline F-35 base. This is all just part of the issues surrounding not UFOs, but might as well be mystery drones. And on a fun, interesting note, over at livescience.com, students build new hybrid drone, watch it fly in the air, and then seamlessly dive underwater. Yes, this is really pretty cool, honestly. You can watch this thing fly around. But basically, yeah, great video. It's a little quadricopter, flies around above a pool, dives into the pool, moves around underwater, then comes up out of the water. Splashed. There it is. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Down it goes. And it's moving underwater. So cool. And then whoosh, right out of the water. I mean, it's simple. It's just a regular old quadricopter, except I guess it was made to be water safe. Well, there you go. Okay, what else we got? Oh, that's pretty much it. You know, I'm going to take a real quick break, and then I'm just going to mention some other news headlines that you might want to check out. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. Yeah. So closing in on the end of the show, and we still have tons of links that we wanted to share with you. Oh, again, you can find them and read more and search our whole website, anomalyarchives.org. There's a ton of ever-growing content there. Links to all kinds of anomaly, paranormal, esoteric, Fortean related stuff. And consider joining for free or paid $1 a month, $2, $5, $10 a month, our Patreon account. So what were some of those other headlines? Yeah, like I said, there's a ton of news you can scroll through and see over at our website. Oh, I forgot to include, so Mossmen and the cryptozoology section. Or, when I was talking about J.D. Vance coming out as obsessed with UFOs, well, he'll be lucky if that doesn't make him seem even more kooky. It is so often the case when politicians are outed as being interested in UFOs or the paranormal or ghosts. With this article over at The Independent, Reform UK announces ghost and UFO expert Rupert Matthews as latest defection to party. And of course, the opposition party to them are using that as an opportunity to lambaste that party for taking in such a kooky-oriented person. In the new tech category, I've been seeing on, something I hate about social media. It seems like everybody just retransmits these image memes that have some amazing claim about some new technological innovation and no link to a citation. And it's like, so every time you have to try to search and find that information. Well, one of the ones I've been seeing a lot is this: DARPA beams 800 watts laser power over record-breaking 5.3 miles. Of course, it's usually made into some much more clickbaity, synopsized headline to get your attention. But yeah, almost always features some kind of AI-created imagery. And yes, and half the time it seems like it's not real. But in this case, I was able to track down this article over at interestingengineering.com. And it is, yes, powerful U.S. military laser fires 800-watt beam over record-breaking 5.3 miles. The laser enters a central aperture and reflects off a parabolic mirror and is basically reassembled into an energy, which is phenomenal. I'm sure it will be weaponized, but hey, that's a pretty amazing discovery. Again, so much more, so many more UFO links. There is this interview with Peter Skyfish and Jim Simivan that's been put out. There's some local UFO sightings that are being retweeted, so to speak, or been reblogged on Red Panda Koala's YouTube channel. Another angle of the green squid UFO filmed in Dallas, Texas last night. Previously, plasma orb UFO filmed in Cedar Park, Texas. You can watch those and see what you think. There's another one. Divers found a 3,000-year-old statue at the bottom of a lake with fresh human fingerprints. Popular Mechanics reports it might have been used in some kind of ritual. Here's what you'll learn when you read this story. This is over in Italy. More information about what's underneath the pyramids over at Popular Mechanics. Archaeologists found an anomaly near the pyramids that may reveal an ancient portal. And some great audio blogs from the UFO podcast, the 1989 UFO and occupant report from Voronezh, Russia. That's a great one. A lesser known Australian UFO case from 1971. Our good friend Brent Rains writing an article about giant rock in the August issue of his Alternate Perceptions magazine. Just so much great stuff. Oh, yes. And similar to what I was talking about with that DARPA energy article, was a friend posted one of those kind of, again, some AI, mostly AI generated, not really, but a image meme of some scientific discovery. In this case, talking about cymatics and the heart. Very interesting. I was able to track this down again. But strangely, this was not new per se, but it was from back in May of 2018, Stanford Business article headline, Putting Sound and Acoustics to Work in Medicine. From the original stethoscope invented more than 200 years ago to the fleeting chirp of gravitational waves, sound has reverberated throughout the ages. And there's this link to a cymatic video. And if you're not familiar with cymatics, cymatics, cymatics is so cool. Basically, it involves using various media material to discern the patterns of sound. And yes, we all know sound can affect you in so many ways, positive and negative. Oh, let's see. Yeah, there's just a ton of other news. So just go scrolling through our Flipboard or go over to anomalyarchives.org. This one, why Ganzfeld experiments haven't proven ESP, boingboing.net, giving a counter perspective on one of my favorite areas of parapsychological research that I always felt was good evidence of that. So if you want to hear some counter arguments to that type of parapsychological research, the Ganzfeld experiments, these are where they basically put a person in an isolation type situation with headphones on to remove all sound perception and halved ping pong balls over their eyes, and typically like a red light in the environment to give, even if their eyes are closed or open, a kind of generic color field while somebody tries to send them psychic impressions. And as far as I was aware, the evidence for this ability of people to pick up on what was being transmitted seemed pretty solid, but there's some counter arguments there. And over on a YouTube video, this scientist says telepathy is real. Here's the proof with Rupert Sheldrake. Yay! Okay, that's going to do it. There's such a ton more news. Oh, speaking of DARPA and their 5.3 mile record-breaking energy transmission, I don't have the article in front of me, but new world record. Weather satellites detect 515 mile long lightning flash. Holy mackerel. What are you going to do with that? Just be safe. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope you'll take care and like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment in the comments, email us at contact@anomalyarchives.org or contact us through snail mail via our P.O. box. Be well. See you on the flip side.